Let me start with this. Right now, as you're listening to this, you are being sold something. Not a product, not a service, a reality. The internet has become the most powerful storytelling machine in human history, and most of those stories are fake. Perfect lives, overnight success, 10x in 30 days, passive income while you sleep. Come on, if you believe everything you see online, you're not lazy, you're human. But here's the hard truth. Nothing you see is real, at least not in the way it's being presented to you. And if you don't wake up to this deception, you'll spend your whole life chasing illusions instead of building something real. You wake up, pick up your phone, and before your feet even touch the floor, you've already compared your life to 10 other people. Someone is traveling, someone just made it, someone is living the dream you think you should be living by now. And right there, in those first 5 minutes of the day, the damage begins. Here's the hook you need to hear. You are not losing. You're just comparing reality to a performance. Social media is not life. It's a stage, and almost everyone you're watching is acting. What you see online is a carefully edited version of someone's existence. It's not the full story, it's the highlight reel. You're seeing the touchdown, not the 2-a-day practices in the heat. You're seeing the launch, not the years of rejection emails. You're seeing the smile, not the stress, debt, doubt, or sacrifice behind it. The internet doesn't show the anxiety attacks, the missed family events, the failed businesses, or the quiet moments of fear when nobody is watching. And yet you measure yourself against that illusion and wonder why you feel behind. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Comparison is the fastest way to kill momentum. The moment you look sideways instead of forward, your energy leaks. You stop executing and start doubting. You don't quit because you're incapable. You quit because you've convinced yourself you're late to a race that was never timed the way you think it was. That's the trap. That's the deception. The internet makes you believe everyone else figured it out early, easily, and perfectly. That's almost never true. Think about this for a second. If someone really had it all figured out, would they need to convince you every single day? The constant posting, flexing, and over-explaining isn't confidence. It's curation. Real growth is quiet. Real progress doesn't need applause. Most of the people doing real damage in their industries aren't loud online because they're too busy building. Meanwhile, the ones screaming the loudest are often selling a lifestyle they haven't fully earned yet. And here's where it gets dangerous. When you consume these polished narratives nonstop, your brain starts to rewrite your expectations. You begin to think success should be fast. You expect results without patience. You want the reward without the repetition. So when real life feels slow, and it always does, you assume something is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. What's wrong is the measuring stick you're using. Let me hit you with a hook that matters. Your life doesn't need to look good, it needs to move forward. Progress doesn't always photograph well. Growth doesn't always get likes. Some of the most important seasons of your life will feel lonely, boring, and invisible. That doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're building something real. The internet has trained people to perform instead of improve. To look successful instead of becoming successful, to chase validation instead of mastery. And the cost of that mindset is massive. You end up optimizing for attention rather than impact. You start making decisions based on how things appear instead of how they actually help you grow. That's how people end up exhausted, empty, and constantly behind, no matter how good it looks on the screen. Here's another truth that cuts deep. Everyone's timeline is different, but social media flattens time. You see someone's chapter 20 and compare it to your chapter 3. You don't see their chapter 1, 2, or the parts they wish never happened. And because you don't see the full journey, you misjudge your own. You think you're slow when you're actually early. You think you're failing when you're still learning. The moment you stop idolizing other people's outcomes, you start respecting your own process. That shift is everything. Instead of asking, why am I not there yet? You start asking, what can I do today to get one step better? That question builds confidence. That question creates momentum. That question puts you back in control. Understand this. Most people online are not lying. They're just not telling the whole truth. And partial truth can be more dangerous than a full lie because it feels real enough to believe, but incomplete enough to mislead. Once you understand that, you stop consuming content emotionally and start consuming it strategically. You learn, you take what's useful, and you leave the rest. So the next time you feel that pressure in your chest while scrolling, pause. Ask yourself a better question. What am I not seeing? You're not seeing the grind. You're not seeing the sacrifice. You're not seeing the years it took to make that moment look easy. And once that clicks, comparison loses its power. You stop chasing someone else's highlight reel and start focusing on your own real work. That's when confidence returns. That's when clarity shows up. And that's when momentum becomes unstoppable. Right now, someone is competing for your attention, and they're winning more often than you realize. Not because they're smarter than you, but because they understand something most people ignore. Attention is the most valuable asset in the world. More valuable than money, more powerful than talent, more influential than intelligence. Whatever holds your attention controls your decisions, your emotions, and eventually the direction of your life. And the internet is a battlefield where attention is hunted, engineered, and sold. Here's the hook that should stop you cold. If you're not intentional with your attention, you're not living, you're being used. Every scroll, every notification, every recommended for you is designed to pull you just a little deeper, not to make you better, not to make you wiser, but to keep you engaged. Because engagement equals profit. Truth doesn't pay the bills, attention does. The platforms don't wake up in the morning asking, how do we help people grow? They ask, how do we keep them here longer? And the fastest way to do that is through emotion. Anger spreads faster than understanding. Shock beats substance. Controversy outperforms consistency every single time. That's why the loudest voices dominate your feed, even when they offer the least value. The algorithm doesn't reward wisdom, it rewards reaction. Think about how often you've clicked something that made you feel outraged, afraid, or insecure. That wasn't accidental. Your emotional triggers are the leverage. Once you react, you engage. Once you engage, you stay. And the longer you stay, the more power the system has over your thinking. Over time, this doesn't just affect what you watch, it affects how you see the world. Here's where it gets dangerous. When attention is constantly fragmented, depth disappears. You start consuming everything in pieces, half ideas, short clips, shallow opinions. You feel informed, but you're not actually informed. You feel busy, but you're not actually productive. You feel connected, but you're more distracted than ever. The noise is constant, and in that noise, clarity dies. Let me hit you with a hard truth. The more attention you give to nonsense, the less you have for your own life. Focus is not unlimited. Energy is not endless. Every minute you spend reacting is a minute you're not creating, learning, or building. That's not motivation talk. That's reality. The internet doesn't steal your time in big chunks. It takes it in tiny, forgettable moments that add up to years. And here's the part nobody warns you about. When you give too much attention to other people's opinions, you slowly lose your own voice. You start thinking in trends instead of principles. You adopt beliefs you've never examined just because they were repeated enough times. Your worldview gets shaped not by reflection, but by repetition. That's how people become loud without being grounded. Attention also rewires expectations. You get used to instant feedback, instant entertainment, instant validation. So when real work demands patience, you struggle. When progress is slow, you lose interest. When results take time, you quit. The internet trains you for speed, but life rewards endurance. That mismatch is why so many talented people never reach their potential. They can't stay focused long enough to compound effort. Here's a powerful hook most people overlook. What you ignore is just as important as what you consume. Discipline isn't only about doing more, it's about filtering better. High performers aren't superhuman, they're selective. They guard their attention like it's gold because it is. They understand that you can't build a future if your mind is constantly rented out to distractions. The truth is, you don't need to know everything that's happening. You don't need every update, every opinion, every breaking story. Most of it won't matter in a week, but the time you spend on it is gone forever. When you start measuring content by whether it helps you grow instead of whether it entertains you, everything changes. Once you realize that attention is currency, you stop spending it recklessly. You stop arguing with strangers online. You stop doom scrolling. You stop letting algorithms decide what you think about next. You become deliberate. You choose learning over looping, creation over consumption, depth over noise. And in a world addicted to distraction, that level of focus becomes a massive competitive advantage. The internet will always fight for your attention. That battle never ends. But the moment you become aware of the fight, you stop being helpless. You stop mistaking stimulation for progress. You stop letting other people's agendas live rent-free in your head. And slowly, quietly, you begin to take your power back, one focused decision at a time. Everyone wants the result, but nobody wants the routine. That's the reality. We've been trained to crave excitement, applause, and instant wins. Yet the truth nobody posts about is this. Before anything looks impressive, it looks painfully boring. That's the part people skip. That's the part that doesn't trend. And that's exactly why most people never make it. Here's the hook you need to hear. If your process doesn't feel boring sometimes, you're probably not building anything real. Real success is not cinematic. There's no background music, no dramatic breakthrough moment every week. It's waking up and doing the same unsexy work again. It's practicing when you already practiced yesterday. It's showing up when motivation is gone and excuses feel logical. The internet sells adrenaline, but progress runs on discipline, and discipline most days feels dull. Think about it. The people you admire for their freedom, skill, or influence didn't win because they were always inspired. They won because they were consistent when it was repetitive, quiet, and unnoticed. They embraced the boring reps. They understood that mastery isn't built in moments of hype. It's built in moments of monotony. Here's where most people mess up. They start something new, feel excited for a week, maybe a month, and then the novelty wears off. The likes slow down. The results don't come fast enough. The work starts feeling ordinary, and instead of leaning into that phase, they label it as failure. But that phase isn't failure, it's the doorway. The boring phase is where separation happens. It's where the amateurs quit and the professionals double down. Let me hit you with something real. Boredom isn't the enemy, distraction is. Boredom means you're still in the game. Distraction pulls you out of it. When you jump from idea to idea, strategy to strategy, platform to platform, you're not evolving. You're escaping discomfort. Consistency feels boring because it demands patience, and patience exposes how badly we want shortcuts. The internet glorifies outcomes without honoring effort. You see the overnight success and miss the decade of preparation. You see the smooth execution and miss the thousands of imperfect attempts. That distortion creates unrealistic expectations. People think if it's not exciting, it's not working. That's false. Most things that work don't feel exciting at all while you're building them. There's a quiet power in repetition. Doing the same thing again and again sharpens instinct, builds confidence, and compounds results. You don't notice it day to day, but over time it creates momentum that looks like magic from the outside. The problem is most people don't stay long enough to experience that compound effect. They quit right before things start to click. Here's a hook that separates thinkers from doers. Consistency is a skill, not a personality trait. You don't need to be special to stay consistent. You need systems, habits, and standards. You need to decide in advance that boredom won't make your decisions for you, because the moment you let feelings dictate your actions, your progress becomes unstable. Real builders understand something crucial. They don't wait to feel motivated. They let action create motivation. They don't chase excitement, they chase alignment. They show up on schedule, not on mood. And over time, what once felt boring starts to feel powerful, because results begin to show up quietly, steadily, and undeniably. The irony is this: the very work people avoid because it feels boring is the same work they later admire when it produces results. Everyone claps for consistency once it pays off. Nobody claps during the lonely reps. But those lonely reps are where confidence is built. When you keep promises to yourself day after day, even when nobody sees it, you develop a level of self-trust that can't be shaken. And here's the part that most people miss entirely. Boring work protects you. It keeps you grounded when trends change. It keeps you stable when hype fades. It keeps you moving when others are stuck waiting for inspiration. In a world addicted to novelty, boring consistency becomes a superpower. Ask yourself a better question, not, is this exciting, but is this effective? Not, do I feel like doing this today? But who do I become if I keep doing this? That shift changes everything, because success doesn't come from intensity, it comes from durability. It comes from staying when leaving feels easier, from repeating when quitting feels justified. Most people are not failing because they lack talent. They're failing because they can't tolerate boredom long enough to let talent mature. They mistake slow progress for no progress. They underestimate how much can change in a year of consistent effort because they're too focused on what hasn't changed in a week. If you can learn to respect the boring phase, to trust it, to show up through it, you put yourself ahead of the majority without doing anything flashy. You stop needing external validation. You stop chasing shortcuts. You start building something solid. And while everyone else is waiting for motivation to strike, you're already miles ahead, quietly stacking days that eventually stack into a life that looks anything but boring. Right now, ask yourself a simple but uncomfortable question. Are you building, or are you watching other people build? Because there's a massive difference between being inspired and being stuck. The internet has turned millions of people into professional spectators. They know everyone's story, everyone's strategy, everyone's success, except their own. And here's the hook that should hit hard. Consuming feels productive, but it rarely is. Creation is uncomfortable, slow, and uncertain. But it's the only place where growth actually happens. Scrolling gives you the illusion of movement. You feel busy, you feel informed, you feel like you're in the game, but most of the time you're just standing on the sidelines watching highlights. You can consume content for 10 years and still have nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, someone with half your knowledge but twice your courage starts creating, learns in public, fails loudly, adjusts quickly, and ends up 10 steps ahead. Not because they're smarter, because they're doing. Here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Consumption is safe. Creation is risky. When you consume, nobody judges you. Nobody criticizes your ideas. Nobody points out your flaws. But the moment you create, post, write, speak, build, you expose yourself. You invite feedback. You invite failure. And that fear keeps people trapped in endless learning mode, waiting to be ready. Ready is a myth. Ready is procrastination dressed up as preparation. Let me hit you with this hook. You don't learn by watching, you learn by doing it wrong. Real understanding doesn't come from tutorials alone. It comes from execution, from making mistakes, from seeing what works and what doesn't in real time. Every creator you admire started with content that wasn't great, ideas that weren't clear, and execution that was far from perfect. The difference is they didn't wait to feel confident. They let action build confidence. The internet rewards creators, not consumers. Algorithms don't push people who quietly absorb information. Opportunities don't chase people who never ship anything. Clarity doesn't come from thinking more, it comes from doing more. The more you create, the faster you learn who you are, what you're good at, and where you need to improve. Creation forces clarity, consumption delays it. Here's where it gets real. Every hour you spend consuming without applying is an hour you're reinforcing someone else's dream instead of your own. You're building engagement for platforms, income for influencers, momentum for brands, while your own potential sits untouched. That's not an insult, it's a wake-up call, because the same internet that distracts you can also amplify you if you switch roles. Creating doesn't mean being perfect, it means being present. It means sharing your perspective, your process, your progress. You don't need to be the best. You need to be honest and consistent. People don't connect with Polish as much as they connect with truth. They don't need another expert, they need someone 1 or 2 steps ahead who's willing to show the work. Another hook that matters: consumption should fuel creation, not replace it. Learning is powerful only when it leads to action. Read, watch, listen, but then build something with it. Write a post, record a video, start a project, test an idea. The moment learning stops turning into output, it becomes intellectual entertainment instead of growth. There's also something deeper happening when you create. You stop seeking permission. You stop waiting for validation. You stop measuring yourself by likes and start measuring yourself by progress. Creation builds self-respect. Every time you show up and produce, even when it's imperfect, you prove to yourself that you're capable of moving without applause. That changes how you think, how you speak, and how you carry yourself. Most people underestimate how powerful small, consistent creation can be. 1 post a day, 1 page a day, 1 idea a day. It doesn't feel life-changing in the moment, but over time it compounds into skill, visibility, and opportunity. While others are stuck consuming the same advice year after year, you're evolving because you're applying. And let's be honest, consumption can become a hiding place. It keeps you busy enough to feel productive, but safe enough to avoid responsibility. Creation removes that safety net. It forces accountability. When you create, results are real. Feedback is real. Growth is real. That's uncomfortable, but that's where transformation lives. The world doesn't need more passive observers. It needs people willing to contribute, experiment, and build in public. You don't need permission to start. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to wait for confidence. Confidence is the byproduct of action, not the prerequisite. So the next time you catch yourself scrolling for inspiration, pause and flip the script. Ask yourself, what can I make with what I already know? Then make it, not tomorrow, not when it's perfect, now. Because the moment you move from consuming to creating, you stop being an audience member in your own life and start becoming the author. Most people chase validation like it's a trophy, but here's the truth that will hit harder than any clickbait headline. Validation doesn't build value, it only builds anxiety. Likes, shares, comments, followers, they all feel good in the moment, but they don't pay your bills, don't teach you skills, and don't protect your future. And here's the hook you need to hear. If you rely on other people's approval to measure your worth, you're living someone else's life, not your own. Think about it for a second. How many times have you posted something online and felt disappointed because it didn't get the reaction you wanted, or held back from trying something new because you were afraid of judgment? That fear isn't just a mental block, it's a trap. It keeps you small, predictable, and safe, while the people who ignore the applause and focus on the work keep moving forward. That's not luck, that's strategy. The harsh reality is this: validation is fleeting. The applause fades, the likes disappear, and the followers move on to the next distraction. But skills, they stay. Skills compound. Skills make you capable. Skills give you leverage. You can buy followers, you can't buy mastery. And the moment you understand that, your perspective changes. You stop asking, will they like this? And start asking, does this make me better? That's a shift that separates winners from spectators. Here's the hook that hits most people like a punch. People who focus on validation are chasing a mirage. They work hard to look successful, not to be successful. They care more about appearances than results. And while they're busy curating an image for everyone else, the real work, the hard, unseen, boring work, is being done quietly by people who understand what really matters. Let me give you a reality check. No one cares as much about your story as you do. That's uncomfortable, but it's true. Waiting for someone to validate your worth is waiting for a bus that may never come. If you build your self-esteem on others' opinions, your confidence becomes fragile. One negative comment, one ignored post, one competitor outperforming you, and suddenly your self-worth is gone. That's not motivation, that's manipulation by the world and sometimes by yourself. The internet amplifies this problem because it's designed to measure life in metrics. Every platform rewards engagement over excellence, emotion over execution. That's why so many people are exhausted chasing approval they'll never fully get. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly as intended. And the people who succeed long-term are the ones who realize early, validation is optional, skills are essential. Here's the hook you can't ignore. Stop seeking approval and start seeking improvement. If you focus on becoming valuable, the validation will follow naturally. But even when it doesn't, you're still winning, because real value isn't dependent on applause, it's dependent on capability. A person who can do more than they are recognized for is infinitely more powerful than someone who is recognized for doing little. The moment you commit to building skills instead of chasing likes, something remarkable happens. Fear diminishes. Doubt loses power. You start taking risks because your confidence comes from competence, not compliments. You stop comparing yourself to others because you know your progress is unique, measurable by your own benchmarks. You stop waiting for permission because you realize the world doesn't owe you applause. It owes you nothing, and that's freedom. And here's another hook that separates thinkers from doers. Validation is a lagging indicator. Skill is a leading one. People notice your skills before they notice your image. Fame is temporary. Competence lasts forever. Influence is earned, not begged for. Every hour spent polishing an image for approval is an hour stolen from mastering something that actually moves the needle. That's why focusing on skill creates leverage that approval never can. Look at any successful person in history. They weren't obsessed with everyone liking them. They were obsessed with becoming better, stronger, smarter. They were willing to be criticized, ignored, and misunderstood for years because they were building something tangible, something meaningful. The world may not have cheered them at first, but results don't lie. Mastery speaks louder than likes, louder than comments, louder than every fleeting metric of validation. Here's the final hook for today. The chase for approval is exhausting, distracting, and ultimately unfulfilling. Building skills is empowering, liberating, and life-changing. Every skill you acquire, every competence you develop, every discipline you master compounds over time in a way validation never will. You create options, influence, and freedom that no applause can ever match. When you shift your focus from looking good to being capable, you start playing a different game. A game where the rules are in your favor and the scoreboard is real. You're no longer dependent on others' opinions. You're no longer measuring worth by someone else's yardstick. You've invested in what lasts. And once you start valuing skill over validation, the rest, the recognition, the opportunities, the respect, naturally begins to follow. In today's world, everyone wants results yesterday. Instant gratification has become a disease, and patience feels like a weakness. But here's the hook that most people refuse to accept. The people who win long-term aren't the ones chasing trends. They're the ones playing the long game. They understand that the biggest victories in life are rarely the ones that come with fireworks. They're the ones that come quietly, steadily, and almost invisibly. While everyone else is distracted by short-term hype, they are quietly stacking the days, months, and years that compound into unstoppable momentum. The long game is boring to watch. It doesn't produce overnight sensations or viral moments. It doesn't have the instant dopamine hit of a trending post or the applause of an audience, but it produces something far more valuable: durability, resilience, and real impact. Here's the hook. While most people are busy chasing validation or quick wins, the ones playing the long game are building assets, skills, and relationships that no algorithm can delete. They aren't worried about what's trending. They're worried about what lasts. Think about it for a second. You've seen people blow up online, right? One viral moment, one lucky strike, and suddenly they seem to have it all, and then 6 months later, they're forgotten. Why? Because short-term success without foundation crumbles fast. It's like building a house on sand. The long game, however, is about laying a foundation so strong that when storms come, and they always come, your progress doesn't collapse. Patience isn't passive, it's strategic. The hook here is simple. Small, consistent actions over time outweigh massive, sporadic efforts. You don't need to do something huge every day. You need to do something meaningful consistently. Learning, practicing, building, and showing up day after day, week after week creates a compound effect so powerful that it eventually makes short-term setbacks irrelevant. While the impatient are frustrated by delayed results, the long game players are quietly accumulating advantages that multiply exponentially. Here's a critical truth most people miss. Success is a marathon, not a sprint, and yet society glorifies the sprint. We celebrate viral posts, overnight wins, and rapid growth, but those things are often illusions. True achievement, the kind that lasts decades, is built in silence. It's built in moments nobody sees, in decisions nobody notices, and in repetitions that feel unexciting in the moment. The hook is this: if you can learn to respect the process and trust it, you've already won half the battle. The long game also teaches resilience. Short-term players crumble at the first sign of difficulty. When results don't come immediately, they quit. But when you're playing the long game, obstacles are just part of the journey. Failure is feedback, not a verdict. Delays are not defeat, they're data. And setbacks become fuel, not barriers. The moment you embrace this mindset, fear loses its grip. You stop quitting because results are delayed. You start doubling down because you understand that every day of effort is an investment in your future self. Here's another hook that changes everything. The long game allows you to ignore noise. While everyone else is distracted by trends, opinions, and temporary fame, you're focused on your craft, your network, and your strategy. You're insulated from the chaos because you know what matters isn't temporary applause, it's permanent capability. And the paradox is powerful. By ignoring the short-term noise, you actually get further ahead faster than those chasing it. The long game also builds trust, both in yourself and in others. Every time you show up consistently, deliver on your promises, and commit to improvement, you reinforce your own reliability. People start noticing, opportunities begin to find you, and the most important benefit is that you stop needing external validation. Your confidence becomes internal, rooted in discipline and proven performance, not likes, shares, or temporary approval. And let's be honest, the long game is lonely. That's the part most people run from. Showing up every day, grinding when nobody's watching, and resisting the urge to quit is uncomfortable. But here's the hook. Comfort is the enemy of progress. The very resistance you feel is the signal that you're growing. The more you tolerate the uncomfortable, the more advantage you create over those who cannot. Ultimately, the long game is about legacy. It's about creating results that persist even when you're not around, about building skills, relationships, and impact that compound over decades. Quick wins fade, viral moments vanish, trends die, but the habits, the discipline, and the systems you build compound in ways that no one else sees until years later. That's why the people who dominate their fields quietly, steadily, and relentlessly are the ones who leave lasting influence. Here's the last hook to lock this in. Playing the long game isn't just a strategy, it's freedom. When you focus on the long term, short-term failures stop frightening you. Short-term praise stops seducing you. You are no longer a slave to trends, algorithms, or opinions. You are in control, moving deliberately, intentionally, and strategically towards something that cannot be taken away. And in a world addicted to immediacy, that mindset becomes your ultimate advantage. In today's world, everyone wants results yesterday. Instant gratification has become a disease, and patience feels like a weakness. But here's the hook that most people refuse to accept. The people who win long-term aren't the ones chasing trends. They're the ones playing the long game. They understand that the biggest victories in life are rarely the ones that come with fireworks. They're the ones that come quietly, steadily, and almost invisibly. While everyone else is distracted by short-term hype, they are quietly stacking the days, months, and years that compound into unstoppable momentum. The long game is boring to watch. It doesn't produce overnight sensations or viral moments. It doesn't have the instant dopamine hit of a trending post or the applause of an audience, but it produces something far more valuable: durability, resilience, and real impact. Here's the hook. While most people are busy chasing validation or quick wins, the ones playing the long game are building assets, skills, and relationships that no algorithm can delete. They aren't worried about what's trending. They're worried about what lasts. Think about it for a second. You've seen people blow up online, right? One viral moment, one lucky strike, and suddenly they seem to have it all. And then 6 months later, they're forgotten. Why? Because short-term success without foundation crumbles fast. It's like building a house on sand. The long game, however, is about laying a foundation so strong that when storms come, and they always come, your progress doesn't collapse. Patience isn't passive, it's strategic. The hook here is simple. Small, consistent actions over time outweigh massive, sporadic efforts. You don't need to do something huge every day, you need to do something meaningful consistently. Learning, practicing, building, and showing up day after day, week after week creates a compound effect so powerful that it eventually makes short-term setbacks irrelevant. While the impatient are frustrated by delayed results, the long game players are quietly accumulating advantages that multiply exponentially. Here's a critical truth most people miss. Success is a marathon, not a sprint. And yet society glorifies the sprint. We celebrate viral posts, overnight wins, and rapid growth, but those things are often illusions. True achievement, the kind that lasts decades, is built in silence. It's built in moments nobody sees, in decisions nobody notices, and in repetitions that feel unexciting in the moment. The hook is this: if you can learn to respect the process and trust it, you've already won half the battle. The long game also teaches resilience. Short-term players crumble at the first sign of difficulty. When results don't come immediately, they quit. But when you're playing the long game, obstacles are just part of the journey. Failure is feedback, not a verdict. Delays are not defeat, they're data. And setbacks become fuel, not barriers. The moment you embrace this mindset, fear loses its grip. You stop quitting because results are delayed. You start doubling down because you understand that every day of effort is an investment in your future self. Here's another hook that changes everything. The long game allows you to ignore noise. While everyone else is distracted by trends, opinions, and temporary fame, you're focused on your craft, your network, and your strategy. You're insulated from the chaos because you know what matters isn't temporary applause, it's permanent capability. And the paradox is powerful. By ignoring the short-term noise, you actually get further ahead faster than those chasing it. The long game also builds trust, both in yourself and in others. Every time you show up consistently, deliver on your promises, and commit to improvement, you reinforce your own reliability. People start noticing, opportunities begin to find you, and the most important benefit is that you stop needing external validation. Your confidence becomes internal, rooted in discipline and proven performance, not likes, shares, or temporary approval. And let's be honest, the long game is lonely. That's the part most people run from. Showing up every day, grinding when nobody's watching, and resisting the urge to quit is uncomfortable. But here's the hook. Comfort is the enemy of progress. The very resistance you feel is the signal that you're growing. The more you tolerate the uncomfortable, the more advantage you create over those who cannot. Ultimately, the long game is about legacy. It's about creating results that persist even when you're not around, about building skills, relationships, and impact that compound over decades. Quick wins fade, viral moments vanish, trends die, but the habits, the discipline, and the systems you build compound in ways that no one else sees until years later. That's why the people who dominate their fields quietly, steadily, and relentlessly are the ones who leave lasting influence. Here's the last hook to lock this in. Playing the long game isn't just a strategy. It's freedom. When you focus on the long term, short-term failures stop frightening you. Short-term praise stops seducing you. You are no longer a slave to trends, algorithms, or opinions. You are in control, moving deliberately, intentionally, and strategically towards something that cannot be taken away. And in a world addicted to immediacy, that mindset becomes your ultimate advantage.